Good day, good people. Welcome to another purpose-filled episode of Lessons for the Journey. The purpose of this podcast is to share insights and information on women's wellness, understanding our whys, and the lessons that inspire us to take positive action for our families, ourselves, and our communities. The topics that we discuss are based on women's wellness, seeing through the lens of metaphysics, sharing spiritual insights, highlighting lessons for the journey, and building healthy relationships. You guys just missed a heated discussion about that. I am your host, Dr. Hetheru, and I share this space with engaging co-hosts, guests, inspiring subjects every Friday at 12 p.m. for a transformative 1-hour space for us here on Podcastic Live and also live on Facebook and YouTube. You can expect deep thought, provoking conversations on self-discovery and personal growth, special guests, locations, sometimes on location, events, people, polls, and thoughts, co-hosts sharing wisdom and life-changing experiences, a powerful blend of spiritual, metaphysics, and wellness lessons, and tools and strategies to help you elevate your mind, your body, and your spirit. This show is produced by Chantel Mosley of Podcasting Studios, with co-hosts Jada Rains, Maat Sabah, who's with us today, Mary E. Bayou, Nicole S. Miller, and special appearances by my sweetheart, Calvin T. Mann, Dr. Calvin T. Mann. And so, if you are seeking clarity, healing, personal empowerment, this podcast is for you. So we need for you to tune in every week. We need for you to engage in conversation inside and outside of this space. And we want you to be transformed by the knowledge and the information that you gain. So I am going to jump right into our topic today, which is a little bit going to take you in a different direction, because that is just the person that I am. Is never a straight line, so don't ever expect that. My co-host today is Maat Sabah, my sister, my friend, my mentor, my co-pilot, right? She's here today, and we're going to talk about the spaces that the essence of Black shows up. And it's going to be open for interpretation. And let me start by saying this, because it was the last thing I said in the last conversation, but there's more than one right answer. So don't get locked into a space where somebody has to be wrong and somebody has to be right. It's just different. Okay. So I thank you for that. So you know what? I think I'm going to start with a question, and then we'll bounce back to the topic. Mm-hmm. I think that'll help us warm up a little bit. So one of the first questions, and these questions were compiled by seekers on the journey. And so as we were reaching out to other people about what they thought about the journey of self-discovery, is it a journey or is it a destination? People started fielding some questions, and these are a few of those questions that we have compiled today. So the first question we're going to talk about, and then we'll jump into our topic we're going to tie it in. Of course, you know how spirit works. Spirit's going to tie it in and give you what you need. So if you're tuning in, I'm going to tell you right now, you might want to get your journal, get some paper, or record so that you can take this information and simmer on it, meditate on it, find your truth in it, find the lesson that resonates with you, and then start to build from there. This is how we evolve. We take in new information, but we also have to appreciate what we take in. So this first question is, what is your perspective on the role of rituals and symbolism in spirituality? Maat, you wanna take that one first? Your perspective on the role of rituals and symbolism in spirituality.
Culturally speaking, our culture is rooted in rituals. And sometimes when you say ritual, people get scared.
They do.
Because it means like, oh my God, ritual, you do hoodoo, voodoo, kudu or something. Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, but brushing your teeth every day is a ritual.
Yes.
You know, so the purpose of, I believe one of the purposes of rituals is to get you in a certain space of consciousness. And once you're in that space, you're able to pull a certain energy. So, for instance, some people have altars in their homes. And a lot of people think that an altar is just something that you have at church or whatever your religious belief is. But I have an altar in my home. And the purpose of my altar is to, when I sit there, it's like my body, my spirit, everything knows to, okay, it's Wu-Sa time. The whole world, everything is being shut out. I'm able to focus on a particular thing, to have laser focused energy towards something specific. So that in itself is a ritual. Sometimes you could get to the point where you don't need those things anymore. You already know how to laser focus yourself. But there's all kinds of rituals, and as I said, in our culture, rituals is the foundation of our culture. As I'm just going to use the term Black people, but everything we do is rooted in some type of ritual, whether we know that it is or not.
Okay. Sure.
A strange one. This just popped in my mind. I don't know why, but the story about the ham. Remember that? So this lady would buy a ham, and she would cut the ends of the ham off and cook them. And her husband asked her one day, it's like, well, why do you cut the ends of the ham off? Why don't you just put the whole thing in there? She said, well, that's what my mother always did. So she asked her mom, why did she cut the ends of the ham off? And her mom said, well, because it wouldn't fit in the pan. I had to cut it for it to fit in the pan. But it became a family ritual.
Right.
So we do things ritualistic and don't even know why we do it.
Absolutely. And I think that, again, I agree with you when you say ritual. I was working with a client, and we were talking about, she had asked about ritual. She saw that somewhere, one of my posters I had in the office in conversation. We were talking about rituals. And she was like, don't you think that's against, isn't that against, the Christian religion? And she was speaking, she said that, she had been having conversations in church, and they were talking about all the things that were connected to witchcraft and things like that. And the term ritual came up. And, I guess that, if you've watched the Ten Commandments, that might... the was it 1960 something version of the Ten Commandments, where they talked about ritual, and it was all condemning. It was all condemning, and you were a pagan if you did certain things, and so those things kind of translated. One of the things that I think that we have to do again is go back and define and refine our values, our ideas, our beliefs. And when you talk about it from a religious standpoint, whatever your religious beliefs are and upbringing, that is a part of that particular culture of your church or your assembly, however you assemble. And there's no judgment about that, but you have to understand the different cultures that make up who you are. You have a family culture. And in your family culture, you have your rituals. Your rituals could be, everybody's in sitting for breakfast, and then we all leave at the same time. That could be a family ritual. It's that time that you gather together, even though, it becomes a routine, and, you're leaving the house together. That's your ritual. That's what's happening in your family culture. And so does that make it against your beliefs that you all gather together? Maybe you have breakfast, or maybe you say something special to each other before you go. I love you. I love you. You give each other a hug and kiss. All of those types of things. So in the different settings that we're in is the culture of that setting. You can have a culture in your group, the group of women you hang out with. It's your beliefs that you share. It's how you share them. Sometimes you pray together. Whatever that is the culture of the group that you're a part of. Your family could be the group. Your classmates could be the group. We're a part of many different types of cultures. And it's not necessarily limited to, your ancestry. That is when we speak about culture, that typically is what we're talking about. But we have to understand that culture means different things in different ways, and what you do inside of those groups help to form some of the rituals that we see, and even the symbolism. You can pull in symbolism. Religion has lots of symbolism, right? Mm-hmm. The cross is a major symbol in Christian religion. The rose, the Vesica Pisces, the little emblem that looks like a fish, like all of those those things are symbols in that particular religion. And it shows up everywhere. We have people who have body art or tattoos. That is part of your ritual. And somebody passes away, you get a scripture or you get some kind of expression to signify their transition. That could be symbolism, that could be ritual too. And so, and we're not talking about judgment. I really want us to get in the habit of removing judgment, because one, you can't change the things that happened in the past. And secondly, when we judge unfairly. One, because we don't have enough information. Mm-hmm. We only have our ideas and our expectations and our experiences. And then we put that on somebody else and say, well, I'm judging you because you don't comb your hair the same way I do, or you don't bathe the same way I do. This was an interesting kind of off-put, but this is what came to my mind, that and sometimes in white culture, they don't use washcloths to bathe, right? In black culture, you better have a washcloth or you're not getting clean, right?
What do you use if you don't use a wash? Just your hand?
Yeah, and the soap.
Okay.
Yeah, and so this was a conversation I actually had with somebody who didn't understand why black people use washcloths. Like, yeah, I said, well, don't they have them in the hotels? And they're like, yeah, but that's not what it's for. Oh, okay. And so it's not a judgment. It's just a difference. Mm-hmm. And so when we start to judge, we start to put expectations on people because this is connected to that, is connected to that. And now you're a bad person, or now you're evil, or now you're atheist, or now you're, all of these labels. And that's what happens when we tend to judge. We have to be able to stop, pause, and allow people to be different. Now, there are some things that we can agree that, that could be harmful for somebody else or harmful to the person. But ultimately, we have to teach by our own conduct. So if you want to help people to change or see the best in you, then you have to demonstrate that conduct, right? And so, anyway, I'm sorry, I had to go that way because that was what, was in my spirit to say. But when we talk about ritual and symbolism and spirituality, I think that that's a difference when you look at it through a religious lens. So when I think about spirit, I think about more the vast part of me that just occupies this body. This body is my physical. Who I am is more my spirit, and who is taking this journey of self-discovery to live through this life the best that I can and do what I believe I'm sent here to do. I believe that's where my spirit resides. And so I think it's important for us to really look at the lens by which we're speaking, the lens by which we're living, so that when we hear words like ritual or symbolism, that it doesn't send you into a frenzy. That might be a sign to you to go and dig deeper, prick up under the skin of the surface of that thing that is causing you to respond in a way that makes you anxious or uncomfortable. That is the work that you need to do for that day. So whenever those things come up, take a moment to see why, and then dig deeper. Put that in your journal. I need to go back and unpack this. Why did I respond like this? That's part of the journey, and that's part of the journey of self-discovery. And I know you just only covered the ritual part. Did you want to talk about symbolism?
Something that was, when you were talking, I was, especially about the judgment part, people don't do things, generally speaking, for no reason. When it comes to symbolism, something really, really popular now, it's ancient, but what's popular now is tattoos. And I had a customer once, and he was tattooed up. He had piercings like everywhere. And when he walked in, my first reaction was shock. And, if I was somebody different, I would have judged him horribly. But I said, did those hurt? I had PTSD when I was coming up. We got our ears pierced the old-fashioned way with a big fat needle in the back, black thread. So I had PTSD about needles. And so I said, did those hurt? He said, no. He said the only one that maybe really hurt was whichever one he showed me. And I asked him, why he got so many piercings, and he explained it to me. I mean, the man on the outset, you would have judged him as, maybe a street person. But the man was brilliant. And he explained what his tattoos meant. He explained the piercings, not that each one had a purpose, but it was something that he liked. It was a look that he liked. And the more I talked to him, it was fascinating. And I've talked to other people that had all kind of tattoos. So the thing is, before you judge somebody, ask them questions about why they do what they do. Mm-hmm. They have a reason for it.
Absolutely.
And, we'll find out that we're really more alike than we are different if you just take the time and talk to somebody about the choices that they make. Sometimes it has to do with their upbringing, and why they do some of the things that they do. But, just, you don't have to agree with it, but just take it as a learning experience. So there's, as you said, there's many, many types of symbolisms. And before you judge something, you should get more information about that thing that you are judging. Like you'll see certain images in the indigenous or Native American culture. You'll see them everywhere. The symbol that we call the swastika now is an ancient symbol. It was taken and the arms were reversed in the opposite direction. But if I'm not mistaken, it has something to do with the 4 directions or something. So everything has a deeper meaning to it. So instead of judging it, find out what that meaning is. Mm-hmm. Educate yourself instead of judging the thing. Right. Because when you judge something, you've learned nothing. You should learn something from every experience and every person that you encounter in your life. So symbolism is very powerful. And just because you might have a particular symbol on, maybe it could be the necklace that you're wearing or ring that you're wearing, that doesn't mean, even though it might have a generalized definition of it, that doesn't necessarily mean that is your definition of it and why you're wearing it. Right. Like I had, there were some rings that I was wearing, and people questioned me about the ring. I said, I wear these because they were gifts. This is from my grandchildren. This one's from my mother. So that doesn't necessarily mean that I have a specific belief about something just because I might wear that thing on my person. Mm-hmm. So judgment again is detrimental to your mental, emotional, and spiritual growth.
For sure. And just one more measure about judgment. I ask the question when I'm teaching in my workshops about judgment. I have a box, and I ask people, how many sides are there to a box? And so most people say 4, just by what they see. So then I'll go to the next picture, which is it in 3D, right? So it looks like a cube. Now I say, how many sides to a box? And so, people start looking differently. And then I have another drawing with the top of the box open so you can see the inside of the box. So now you have to take into consideration that there's an inside, there's a top side, there's a bottom side of a box. So that number keeps changing with new information. Mm-hmm. And so that's one of the amazing things about the human mind and the brain, which we're going to talk about, that allows you to keep evolving. That is what we're supposed to do. And I so appreciate you saying that, my aunt, that you should take something away from everybody you meet, from all the experiences that you have, from the things that you explore that resonate with you, that make you question, that make you uncomfortable, that make you excited. Those are the things of the lessons for the journey. They're not there by chance or by coincidence. Mm-hmm. And other people's sharing of their experience can be new information for you. I never thought about it like that. Oh, that's what that meant. I always wanted to know. Like, those types of questions come from the trigger to get you to explore deeper. And they're around us all the time, but we're so busy. If we spend half as much time doing self-exploration as we do on social media and scrolling through, different TikTok ads and being entertained, that is divinely designed for you to get more insight, inner sight, not for you to take in other people in the way that it becomes entertainment. because it really just means holding ideas in your mind. Holding ideas in your mind. But that also can be a distraction. And so when it becomes a distraction, that's when we need to step back and rethink our choice. And so as we're talking about our brain, did you have anything else you wanted to add about that question? Because it's a pretty loaded question.
Yeah, it's loaded. No, I'm good.
Okay. Okay. So when I started to think about the essence of Black showing up in other places, I really started to listen to where Spirit was trying to take me with that. And so, at first glance, I was thinking, okay, it's going to go into like culture, like we talked about last week or the last episode, where we talked about how art and music and all these and hair had were originated in our culture. And I'm saying our deep history, not just recent history, but deep history. Like my aunt mentioned that our ancient history, it's all woven through there. But the other part that is also very ancient is the human body. And more importantly, the human brain. And so my question that I was asking, the Spirit was giving me this insight, was about how does Black show up in the human brain? And I'm using Black now as a metaphor for melanin, right? The dark pigment of melanin. And so I started to do a little bit deeper. And by no means am I the expert on the brain. But what it did is it always triggers a metaphysical lens on how to look at something, or a spiritual lens on how to look at something. And that's typically how Spirit is teaching me when I get those insights and downloads. So I'm going to share with you what I got out of it, and then encourage you to do some exploration in this area too, to see how it relates to you directly. So when I asked that question about where Black shows up, other places that Black shows up, Spirit led me to look at some things about the brain. And so the three things that were given to me to look at was the prefrontal lobes, the limbic system, and the brain stem. So the prefrontal lobes is really our executive function. So that's how we problem solve, set goals. So if and that's in this area, this region, like the front of your head. And then the limbic system is kind of up under that. And that's where our emotions are stored. That is how we connect. That is where we love. That is also our deep memory. So not just our present memory, the things that we remember pre-birth, but it goes back into our genetics as well. And then the last one is the brain stem, which is really about our survival. And that is talking about more the safety, your fight or flight impulse. It is the fight in us too. And so when I started to look at that way, I was like, oh, okay. So if the front part of my head, my brain, and it's, of course you see with your brain, not necessarily with your eyes. It's just a reflector, right? To me, that's amazing. First of all, our human design is so super incredible. It is so super incredible. I mean, talking about the real architect, right? God being the architect. They talk about God being the potter, but God is a heck of an architect and engineer.
Absolutely.
The ultimate engineer. Mm-hmm. And so when you think about how we are designed, that the brain, as funny as the thing looks, it looks like, the old Little Caesars pizzas. Yeah, with the dough.
Well,
yeah.
I was thinking about chitlins.
Well, okay, I can see that too. But I guess because I like the food and I like pizza. But it just reminds me of the soft dough without the cheese and the sauce on it. Mm-hmm. That's what it reminded me of, the lumpiness of it. Anyway,
and I do not eat chitlins, by the way.
Do you eat pizza?
No.
Oh, okay. So
I love pizza when I could eat it, but
okay. Well, pizza is a staple in my house. All kind of pizza. So it just kind of reminded me of that. So I started to think, okay, if this is where we're solving problems and it's in the front of us, right? That kind of means to me that our problems are often before us, and we kind of think it's behind us, or on the side of us, or that the problems are somebody else. It just was a reminder when I started to think about that when I set goals, that's something that is in front of me. A goal is in front of me. It's something that I'm striving to do. And so this is part of the control of that. And so as I think about that, I'm like, okay, so it was just a different perspective to look at when I think about problem solving and I think about my goal setting, that we also are designed to be able to solve the problem. Whatever problem, and I think about some things that may seem so complex. To me, one of the most complex and really important activities that I have done in my lifetime so far, outside of being a mom, was I wrote an appeal to the U.S. Supreme Court. I'm not an attorney, but I actually wrote an appeal to the Supreme Court. One, because of the case I felt so passionate about. It was a harassment case against a big system, like an education system. And my case was heard in front of the Supreme Court. They sided with the educational institution for whatever political reasons. But the fact that I was able to write it, the fact that it was heard, and there are a limited amount of appeals to the U.S. Supreme Court that are heard every year. And so, but the fact that the one that I wrote was even heard, that's a major accomplishment. And it took me about 3 months to write it, but that was research. I mean, things that I had never even thought about. I had to research other cases. I had to, cite a lot of examples, and then I had to follow their specific path to get an appeal heard. And I'm thinking, wow, attorneys do this, right? I didn't realize that I had the capacity to even do it. But I set it as a goal, and it was a problem that needed to be solved. But it was more so that I hate bullies. I'm sorry to use that language. I understand the process of bullies, but that always picking on a little guy kind of thing just really, and that's what I felt. So that was one of my motivations. And so because of that, I was able to meet the goal. I was able to attempt to solve the problem, which was to make sure that the person who I was writing it with, that their voice was heard, that what she had gone through was acknowledged. And so we were able to do that. And so it wasn't something that I thought I had the capacity for. When I was asked to help her with it, she's like, well, I trust you. I know you can do it. And I'm looking at her like, well, why do you know that I can do that? How do you know that I could do that? She's like, I just believe that you can do it. I'm like, I didn't even believe it at the time, but I was like, but you know what? They're going to get it because they shouldn't be bullying people, and that's what I wrote from. I wrote from my passion. And so knowing that if I can do that, and this was the point for me, if I can do that, I can do anything. And that's what it put in my head. So whatever, and that was a part of writing is part of my gift. So I know I can write, but can I follow? I mean, and the instruction book for writing an appeal it's a huge book. You got to read that first. It's not something that you can read as you go. You got to read that and then use it as a reference. So it was a huge undertaking, but I did it. And so for me, when I think about the executive function, it tells you. It doesn't tell you what you can't do. It's saying this is what's in front of you, and you have the capacity to do it because it is in front of you. That's why when you set a goal, you can achieve that goal because it's in front of you. So your body, by divine design, has a mechanism, your prefrontal lobe, that says that this is the problem to be solved, and I'm putting it in front of you because you can solve it. This is the goal to have, and I'm putting it in front of you, or I'm in agreement with you about this goal because you can achieve it. So there's nothing that we can't do. Especially when it's put before you. So when you're facing those huge obstacles, even with forgiveness, forgiveness would be a problem, right? Because that means something was done to cause you to have a choice to whether you're going to forgive or not. That is put in front of you, meaning that you can do it. If it's put in front of you, you can do it. Otherwise, it would have no place before you. And I think that's another way that the universe helps to sharpen us. It helps to make us better, to take us beyond who we think we are at that moment. And it keeps pushing us forward. And I think that's one of the ways that the essence of Black shows up in our melanin and our ability to solve problems and set goals. Because we have an unlimited supply of inventors and creators and people whose life is dedicated to solving problems, setting those goals, meeting those objectives, and getting it done. Just getting it done. That's a huge part of who we are. What's your thoughts on that?
When you talked about looking forward, I share with people that when you focus on the past, and specifically painful situations or situations that made you angry or whatever, it depletes your life force. And I haven't seen very many people, I've really never seen anyone that drives their car only looking in the rearview mirror. Your rear view mirror is only for you to use at specific times. And you might look up there a little bit, but you're constantly facing forward. Why do we have our eyes in the front of our head instead of the back of our head if we're not supposed to be looking forward? So it's important that when you set goals, that you constantly work towards them, constantly move forward, constantly think about that thing. All of those things increase your life force. They will change your life. It's like focus on the now and focus on the future in terms of what your goals are. Forward thinking. Why do they call it forward thinking? Why don't they say it's backwards thinking? So all of these little sayings contribute to this type of thing. So when you were speaking, that's what I was thinking about, is focus on the future. Focus on what they say, eat what's on your plate. Focus on the now and setting goals and working towards those goals.
Right. And it does keep you inspired. And that's the amazing thing about being a spirit being, is the connection that you have. And so when I think about that, I also think about, your chakras. What chakras are being activated? I'm always referring back to that, because once I started to understand how chakras can be a roadmap. So again, we have 2 chakras that are connected to our head. We have our third eye, our intuition, and we have our crown chakra, which is our spirituality. So when you're talking even about the brain, you're still talking about that region. You're talking about the frontal lobe, it actually is from kind of the top of your head to your forehead. Those are 2 important chakras that are connected to that. So that means to me that we can look at our goals through a spiritual lens. We can look at our problems through a spiritual lens. And we can also use the tools of intuition to solve those problems and to reach our goals. So it's not just one part of us that's in motion. We're multi-part being. And so we can use our spiritual insights. We can use our physical tools. We can use our strength. We can use all of that. But it's showing you with a problem that is not just physical. It is also spiritual. And you have the tools already to overcome. That's another confirmation. If it's a spiritual matter, setting a goal, overcoming a problem, we can use our spiritual lens now. It doesn't have to just be a linear thought. Now we have a more rounded view of how we can use our tools and that new information. Now you can take it from a actual physical opportunity. So say that I want to my goal. I have a goal to become a pilot. I want to get my pilot's license. This has been my goal, but probably as long as you've known me, that has been one of my desires. And I keep that in front of me. So I'm a member of the association. I get books and tests to help me do that. I got a little pen from the pilot association. Those things keep me motivated. It's not necessarily a problem, but it is a goal. And part of that goal and the ways that things come to me. I had a chance to meet with the Tuskegee Airmen, to go to City Airport, and they were speaking to kids, but I was still there. I felt like a kid. It's just such an exciting opportunity to meet so many people with such an amazing opportunity. They get to fly into the heavens. Just the thought of that. I mean, we take it for granted, but there wasn't always a time where we had access to flying. And we do it so readily, a little less these days because of all the things that are happening. But it's still part of that spiritual ascension for me. When I think about evolving and my evolution, I do think of myself as growing and getting higher. And so that looking at it through that lens is very helpful to keep me on that goal. So I know that I can reach that. I can reach that goal of becoming a pilot, getting my pilot's license. And any obstacle that might stand in my way, I can overcome it. Because now I know that I don't have to think through it and use the traditional tools. I can use spiritual tools too, because this is a spiritual matter. And my intuition is a spiritual matter. So if I'm listening to those things and I'm using those opportunities, that means I have more tools to help me reach that goal and eliminate any problem that might be in my way. So that's another, just a different way to look at that. The other one was the limbic system. This is our emotional state. So this is about connection. This is about our deep memory. So it's about our memory. And this is also where some of our trauma is kind of stored in that space if we allow it to be. Mm-hmm. And then the final one helps us to start to overcome that fear. But I do want to stop here at the limbic system and talk about our emotional state. And looking at it through a spiritual, metaphysical lens, how do you see that how we stay connected, or that it's part of our deep memory, this emotion that we express all the time, being so emotional and responsive and impulsive?
You said part of our deep memory?
Mm-hmm. That's what one of the things that the limbic system helps to support.
You know, people usually run away from their emotions because they don't know how to process them. Mm. When you really understand, and this is just my belief system, and this is my life experience, when you really understand what your emotions are for, and that you choose to give energy to certain situations or not. Mm. When you experience loss of something, you can be in the moment, feel what you feel, and develop a process on how to feel it. Don't fight it. Feel it. Try and dissect exactly what it is that you're feeling, but then allow it to pass. Everything that happens in our life is a lesson. Every single thing that happens in our life is a lesson.
Yes.
When you learn to look at it as a lesson and treat it as such, then you won't hold on to certain things for the length of time that you hold on to them. Everybody has experienced loss, and we all process loss differently depending on what type of loss it is. If it's loss of a loved one, it could be the loss of your job. So, for instance, the loss of your job. If you have lost your job, of course, that's a traumatic situation. You probably don't know. Maybe you don't know what your next move is. But instead of focusing on that, look at it as an opportunity to go in the direction that you've always wanted to go in. Mm. Maybe you didn't think that you could do it. So let's say, for instance, you wanted to go into photography, but you don't even own a camera, and don't even think that you could do it. So what you do is join a club of photographers. Ask somebody, can you just go with them? Can you spot them when they go on certain shootings and see how they do what they do? Talk to them. And little by little, as you start to do that, things will start to show up in your world. They might invite you to something. It's like, hey, I need somebody to go with me on this photo shoot. Can you do this? You'd be surprised the doors that open up. Mm-hmm. So instead of looking at that loss of a job as a curse, look at it as an opportunity. It's always an opportunity for you to choose. What way do you want to go? You want to hold on to this and you want to stay rooted in, oh my God, I lost my job? Or do you want to take it as an opportunity to be like, oh my God, now I can go in the direction that I always wanted to go in. Even I don't know how I'm going to do it, but I'm going to start to make steps to go in that direction. When it comes to the loss of a loved one, and we all have lost loved ones, that is a little bit something that might take a little bit more depending on the situation of the loss. If it's somebody that has been sick, that's been sick for a long time, it's easier to process than somebody that, say, for instance, got killed in a tragic accident. That's a little bit harder to mentally process. But again, do what you need to do. If it's go to grief counseling, talk to somebody, get a good cry, sit down, be still and talk to God. It's like, I need help making my way through this. Whatever you need to do to process that pain, you do that. But then again, don't hold on to it. Like, I try and remember the good things about the person and focus on those. And then little by little, it doesn't hurt the same. It hurts differently. Mm-hmm. So it never feels good. I lost my dad a couple of years ago and my brother a year before that. It doesn't feel good when I think about it, but I laugh when I think about them. So I'm choosing to not hold on to how they passed. I'm choosing to hold on to the lessons that I got from them, the joy that I got from them, the crazy stuff that they would do or say. I'm choosing to hold on to that energy,
right,
instead of the other part. So it's really important that we find a way or find someone to assist you in how to process your trauma, how to process your emotions. And again, judgment plays a part in that. Guilt plays a part in that. Yes. Judging yourself for something. That's what guilt is. You're judging yourself for something. Maybe you need to look at it in a different way. And the bigger question is why? Why are you judging yourself? So that, when it comes to the emotions, that's a loaded question. And that right there is the biggest, using your word, that is one of people's biggest strongholds. Mm-hmm. Is understanding how to process their emotions in a healthy way.
For sure.
Understanding what is the lesson that they got out of the situation.
For sure. That and you brought up grief. Grief is a heavy one, but one of the I spent a whole season talking about grief, especially suicidal ideation. I spent the whole season talking about that because I think it's so important that there are things that people don't know about grief. One of the aspects of grief is that there are stages of grief. Mm-hmm. And how you're responding is an indicator as to where you are in the stages. That was my issue for years. I struggled with grief because I didn't know that there were stages. And so I didn't know that I could allow myself to go through it. It just felt like it was going to be this way forever, the end. Mm-hmm. And I had the expectation that it was going to be like that forever, the end. As I was moving through that process and as I started to, as information started to be brought to my attention, I started to see that there were stages. And of course, I wrote about it. I will write a book about it so that the people will have an opportunity to have a tool to navigate it, because I don't want you to have to go through what I went through. I went through it for both of us. So it's in a book. It's called The Cardinal in Red Dress, My Journey Through the Valley of Death. And it was just such an important tool to understand that grief had stages. It's not forever. Now, part of that process, like you talked about, is what you do with the information. Once I understood, and I seasoned a little bit when my dad passed, I did not have to let go of my memories of him or hearing his voice or seeing him or connecting with him or talking to him. My dad was my guy. We talked about everything all the time. And so I still talk to him about everything all the time because I recognize that my dad, his physical body, the vessel, is not with me, but the spiritual man that occupied that body is still with me. Mm-hmm. And that was such a relief that I did not have to let him go. Mm-hmm. His body had to be processed. He had to go back to where it came from. But his spirit is still, because he's energy, which we're going to get to, hopefully we'll get to that point, that energy is still a part of me. And I feel that when I think of him, or I can hear his voice, I can already know what he's going to say about something that I might talk about. Like, that connection, that energetic connection is still there, and he's still with me. So I don't have to feel like I'm without him in the way that I had to before when I thought about grief and loss and death. So that was such a learning experience for me. So if use a tool if you're going through that right now, you're going through grief or experiencing suicidal ideation and feeling some kind of way about why you're still here. that is a great tool to use. It's called Cardinal and Red Dress. You can get it on Amazon. You can look, just Google my name. You can find that book, Hetheru Miller. You can find it. So if you're in that space, use that as a tool, at least a starting point. It's a lot of good information in it and some affirmations to help you navigate where you are. But know that you are, and you are here. This is what I'm experiencing. I'm angry. I'm shocked. I'm in denial. I'm feeling guilty. Whatever that is, you can find yourself so you know what's next for you. That you've worked through this process and now you're here. That is so super helpful. It's so super helpful. It's like having a GPS so you know where you're going. So thank you for sharing that, Ma.
I just want to say one more thing about that too.
Mm-hmm.
When sometimes when people go through things and they feel that they don't have any other options, we said when they have suicidal ideations,
mm-hmm.
they feel that they don't have any other options. There's no answers. But there is always an answer. Mm-hmm. More than one.
More than one.
Always. And if you ever get in that space, if you just hold on to that, there is an answer. There's more than one answer. You just have not found it yet, but it is out there.
Mm-hmm.
And that's something that is very important, because when people feel hopeless, they feel that there aren't any answers. Well, you haven't found it. You don't have the answer, but somebody else does.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Tie a knot in it. Whatever that feeling that you have, tie a knot in it and hold on for 24 hours. Give yourself 24 hours and get out of isolation. Because typically when we have those thoughts, we're in isolation. Mm-hmm. We're by ourselves, and I call it the instigator. It's saying, oh, yeah, this is that, and this is that, and you're not this, and this won't. You got to get away from the instigators. You got to get out and get into nature. Get fresh air. Put that around you. It's really important, because that helps to reset your mind. Mm-hmm. Because you're constantly bombarded by those thoughts. You need to get out of that space. So thank you for bringing that back up too. That's important. So the last one is the brainstem, and this is our survival state. So this is where we feel safe. This is our what prompts us to want to fight for, and fight. So fight for your beliefs, fight for your friends and your family, fight for peace of mind. All of that type of activity is in this particular part of our brain. And this is our brainstem, so that is kind of the center in the back. And it's connected to your throat chakra, which is, I think, another deep place, because that means that we need to be communicating when we're feeling that way. When you're feeling unsafe or safe, kind of like the conversation we had earlier, but when you're not feeling valued or appreciated or heard, that's another part of what happens in this particular part of the brain. So feeling safe, it is your survival state. So it means you're going to have to take some action. This is not the place in your body systems where you're going to do nothing. You are going to fight. You got to feel safe. And so the question that you constantly asking yourself is, do I feel safe? Do I feel safe in my relationship? Do I feel safe in my neighborhood? Do I feel safe in my house? When those questions arise, and they're questions because that's connected to your throat chakra, that means there's some communication that needs to be taking place. And because it's one of your higher chakras, or part of your higher self, that means that it's going to have a different type of impact. So communication from your throat chakra, you need to be talking to somebody talking to you. There has to be some kind of communication exchange. So how do you talk through being safe? How do you talk through that? One of the ways that we talked about earlier was about expressing and understanding that this is an expectation. And your expectation, it could be something that's expressed. It could be something that is not even spoken and had not been spoken. So it can go back into your backstory. And I call it the meridian past. So things that happened to us in our past, likely is our deep past or our childhood, bless you.
Thank you.
And so now we have an opportunity to talk about some of those things that may have been traumatic in our journey. You need to be talking about those things, because this is part of why you're still unsafe. And you could be in a secure place and still be unsafe. That, again, comes from our backstory, our journey. So we need to make sure that we are talking through those things. So if you have to talk to a therapist, a counselor, a coach, a friend, someone that you trust, that might be part of the journey through that safety issue. And so fighting could be a physical fight. It could be taking a stand against or for something. It's the point in your body system that you have to take action. And so is also okay. And so I think that's a really important part of the journey is when you make up your mind and you take a stand. You have to stand for something, or what's the saying? You fall for anything. And so when I think about the brainstem again, just looking deeper. So when we talk about, or there's been something that's happened to you that triggered something that happened in the past. So a lot of people experience a post-traumatic stress disorder, and it could be big or small. So for me, one of the things, I had an issue for a long time with door slamming. And so it would set me off and I would yell like, "Close, stop slamming the door, get away from the door." Like I would do that. And the reason why I would respond like that was because I got my finger cut off in the door. My little brother slammed the door and my hand was in the door and it cut my finger off. So now when I hear door slam, it sets me off like that. And so it's taking time to work through that, to recognize that's where it's coming from, and I'm safe. I'm okay. And so, when I would hear it, it wasn't just for me, especially when it was kids playing, it would set me off. So I would think, because I was a child when that happened, I was thinking that this could happen to another child. And so all of that rolled up in that emotion made me feel unsafe when doors were slamming. And so unpacking that, understanding this is where that is coming from, really helped me to get through that phase of door slamming. I don't have to go off anymore. I mean, it would set me off, and now I can say I can get up and go look, because the other products I wouldn't want to see, because in my mind I would have a flash of the blood and everything that I saw and experienced at that time. So we have to walk through and unpack those things. Again, that was something I had to talk about. I couldn't just go through that process and not talk about it, because I was keeping it to myself and I was still reliving it over and over again because I wasn't talking through it. And I wasn't sharing with people why that set me off. So, the kids were like, "Auntie Shelly is just screaming. Why is she screaming? Why is she mad at me?" And it wasn't that I was mad at them. So I had to explain what happened. So it also allowed them to be more careful. So they're not slamming doors and they're paying more attention to what they were doing and what other people were doing. So that post-traumatic stress it's real. It's real, whatever that trauma is, whether you think it's something big or small, we have to work through it. And because, again, it's in that space where we are unsafe in our brainstem, where we're unsafe, that is part of the process that we need to do to resolve it or to heal through it. And so, it's just another insight. But I think that's an important one when so many of us have gone through so many different life experiences. But the one thing that I do want to share with you about those traumatic experiences and traumatic life events is that it allows us to unleash a superpower, a power that we did not know we had. And part of understanding that is going through that and unpacking it. And how did it change your life? What types of decisions do you make now, knowing and having the experience that you had? What do you do with that information? What do you do with that emotion? And, there are lots of examples where a person had gone through something traumatic or had seen something traumatic and used superhuman strength to help or resolve it. It was a lesson some years ago about a mother whose child got stuck up under a car, and the mother had the strength to lift the car and pull her baby from up under that car. I mean, superhuman strength, but it came out of the trauma, right? When you are in that state, all of your systems are aligned for survival. All of your systems are aligned, and that was her fight. Her fight was, I'm moving the obstacle of this car on my baby, right? And so, I mean, there are lots of examples, and I'm sure each one of us have one of those amazing examples where the thing that seemed so huge as an obstacle was moved out of the way because of some superhuman ability. And that could be hearing, that could be inner sight, that could be any sense that could come alive because of that. The strength as well. So, Maya, have you ever had an experience like that?
You mean a traumatic experience?
Where some super strength or some something powerful in you rose up and allowed you to overcome the obstacle?
Well, the first thing that came to my mind, I don't know if I should mention it, but when you talk about a power rose up in me, I had an issue with my oldest one day. Mm-hmm. You know how they say kids will try you? Mm-hmm. And I don't know if I should share this, but it's a family joke now. But he got a little bit out of pocket with me. Mm. And I didn't realize it, but I had collared him. And he was about 2.5 feet off the floor up against the wall. Right. And so it's a family joke with my kids. And I was, don't mess with that little lady. You know, but I don't know if that answered the question.
Yeah, right. Or the boomerang shoe.
Yeah.
Anybody experience? Mine would be, for our family, it would be superhuman hearing, right? My mother could stand on the porch and say, my mother would stand on the porch and say, come home. And it didn't matter where you were in the neighborhood. You would hear your mom say, come home. Mm-hmm. And especially if the street lights were about to come on, you know, and you use superhuman speed mm-hmm. to make your way home quickly.
Oh, you know, I found one. This is like if there's, well, I guess you don't have to have siblings, but I know that you can bend time. Do you know that you can bend time?
Yes.
So the kids are playing, right? We would all be playing, house torn up. But then when mom and dad weren't home, but when we heard the car come in, it takes how many seconds from the car to come into the driveway, go in the garage, close it, and then get into the house. The house is completely clean in less than a minute. How does that happen? We bent time.
Yes. You know, I have one of those examples too. I had a grant that was due, and the grant, the time that, you know, they had to time stamp the grant. Mm-hmm. And I was the driver, so I was with the director of the organization. And I was like, nope. I was like, God's going to work this out. And so we had to get into downtown because that's where the place was. Now, getting into downtown, not necessarily having a parking space, but getting close enough to the door so he could still walk in the door, had to sign in, had to go up to the place where the grant was due. They had to like time stamp it like a time sheet kind of thing. Mm-hmm. And it was stamped. Now I know, and that's not about like the time difference, because I know what time it was. That time stamp on the machine was like 2 minutes before the deadline. And it was so incredible. I was like, you know, and I've had that several times. I'm like, Lord, please, like, you know, because you put so much effort into it, and then you still got to get there and all that. So, now things are electronic, but I think it's really important. So our topic today was spaces that the essence of Black shows up. And we were talking about how melanin shows up in the different spaces and to empower us. So we were talking about the 3 places that it shows up. We talked about the prefrontal lobe, executive function, problem solving, and goals. We talked about the limbic system, which is our emotional state, our deep connection, our deep memory. And then I was talking about the traumatic experiences too. And then the brainstem, which is our survival, which is our ability to feel safe, and our fight, what will cause you to rise up. And even that superhuman strength will cause you to rise up when you have an experience and you're not feeling safe, or somebody that you love is not feeling safe. So we are amazing. Mm-hmm. We are amazing. Absolutely. And so just a few more things about melanin that I want to leave with you for your final thoughts. Melanin can conduct electricity. It serves as a barrier for ultraviolet rays. It is a part of the melanocytes that are found and produced in skin, hair, eyes, and in your ears, which was something I didn't know, that melanin was also in your ears. Mm-hmm. And that it's used, of course, the way that it's used in the world is cosmetics, sunscreens, solar cells. I was excited to hear that. Bioelectronics, and they use it in wound healing treatments. So the black shows up in other spaces, and we're talking about melanin in particular, the dark pigment that is a superhuman spiritual tool that we have access to. How we use it, where we use it is really important, but respecting it and valuing it is even more important. And so just as we close out today, I just want to thank our co-host, my Aunt Sabah.
Thank you.
Can you share with us a little bit how to find you? How do we find you in the world, Ma?
Sure. Mm-hmm. You can check my website out. It's relationshipfirstaid.com. You can email me at relationshipfirstaid@yahoo.com. Same name on Facebook, Relationship First Aid, and Instagram is Relationship First Aid.
Okay, awesome. So you can reach me, Dr. Hetheru Miller. You can look me up for the books that I referenced for you today. And you can find me on Amazon, or you can just Google me and find me there. But you can also visit my website at yourinspiredwithad journey.com. That's yourinspiredjourney.com. And reach out to me directly at 313-759-7855. Even follow us on our Facebook. You can find me on Facebook. You can find me on Instagram. You can also find me on YouTube. So look up Hetheru, Personal Change Coach on YouTube, and find these episodes there. Some other video clips that might tickle your fancy. Thank you for joining us today. I thank our producer and engineer, Chantel Mosley, for being here with us and keeping us in line and sending her good energy as she always does. And I thank you that you would join us next Friday at 12 p.m. for this 1 hour phenomenon of looking at our lessons for the journey. Thank you, and please stay clear.